Welcome to this explainer. Today, we're diving straight into something that might completely reframe how you think about your own intelligence. We're talking about the psychological trap of all or nothing thinking, and more importantly, how you can actually boost your cognitive flexibility. If you've ever felt completely stuck in a rigid way of viewing the world, or if you find yourself constantly exhausted by the imperfections of the people around you, you are in exactly the right place. We're going to break down exactly why this happens, and then we're going to figure out how to break free from it.
Right off the bat, this is a pretty hard-hitting realization. The idea here is that simple labels usually just mask our inability to handle conflicting ideas. Our world is naturally complex. It's literally built entirely out of nuance. But when we get overwhelmed, our brains just want the easiest possible way out. We cling to these simple slogans, not because they're actually true, but because they give us this false sense of safety. They basically protect us from the hard work of deep critical thought. So we kind of have to ask ourselves directly, do we tend to view situations as either total successes or absolute, complete disasters? Seriously, be honest with yourself for a second. When you take on a new project at work, or maybe you try a new hobby, what happens if you aren't perfect at it right out of the gate? Do you immediately label the whole thing a failure? Or maybe you've looked at a person and decided they're entirely bad based on just one thing they said. That right there is the core symptom of the exact mindset we're unpacking today.
Okay, let's talk about the cognitive trap itself. Now, jumping to a quick, firm conclusion might make you feel like you're this super decisive person, but it's actually putting a massive invisible ceiling on your problem-solving skills. This rigid mindset is what psychologists call dichotomous thinking. Basically, it's a survival mechanism. Thousands of years ago, our brains needed to make split-second decisions to survive. Is that animal safe or dangerous? Good or bad? But for a highly intelligent person trying to navigate today's super complex world, forcing everything into two neat little boxes literally shuts down the parts of your brain responsible for advanced problem solving. You're basically trading your real intellectual potential for a comfortable, easy answer.
There's just this massive, stark contrast between forcing the world into two tiny boxes versus actually embracing intellectual nuance. High IQ thinking isn't just about having all the right answers memorized. It's characterized by the ability to handle complexity. It's cognitive flexibility. It's about getting completely 100% comfortable living and operating in the messy gray areas of life, rather than just clinging to right or wrong.
And here's a huge red flag to watch out for. If you find yourself frequently throwing around extreme words like always or never when you're talking about complex issues, you need to pay close attention. Relying on these absolute words actually signals that your brain is actively avoiding complexity. When you say someone always does something or a situation is never going to get better, you've officially stopped observing reality. You've basically swapped out actual observation for a cheap, rigid label. So where does this even come from? Well, you aren't just born with a narrowed cognitive scope. To figure out why you do this, we need to trace the habit back to its roots. This is a learned behavior, usually deeply ingrained during our childhood to help us navigate the adults around us. Check out this developmental arc. Think about it. If you were the easy child who constantly got praised just for following the rules perfectly, or maybe you were a kid who had to grow up way too fast, you essentially learned that your safety and your worth depended on being exactly what was expected of you. No deviations allowed. And you carry that straight into adulthood, which is exactly why you might find yourself lying awake at 2 a.m., anxiously replaying conversations in your head, just terrified that you made a misstep. Because of those childhood roots, your brain ended up categorizing human behavior strictly into a right way to be and a wrong way to be. Zero middle ground. So instead of seeing a slightly awkward social interaction as just a normal, flexible part of human connection, your dichotomous thinking frames it as a catastrophic failure on your part. And this brings us to how this cognitive trap completely sabotages your personal connections. This isn't just an internal struggle that makes you anxious, it projects outward. Have you ever cut someone off simply because your brain couldn't reconcile that a good person can sometimes make a bad mistake? If someone you've labeled as good disappoints you, which, let's face it, is inevitable because they're human, it feels like a massive betrayal of the label you gave them. Your brain panics because the neat little categories are mixing. So what's the easiest solution? You cut them off entirely. You throw out the whole relationship because it doesn't fit perfectly into that good box anymore. But true emotional intelligence means seeing people, and crucially, seeing yourself as a complex collection of shades. Humans are not monolithic. When you finally stop demanding that the world be strictly black or white, you actually end up protecting your own peace. Why? Because you're no longer constantly being let down by the basic reality of human imperfection. Okay, so recognizing this trap is huge, but it's really only the first half of the battle. Now we have to actively rewire how we approach information, how we handle setbacks, and how we deal with people. Breaking this cycle is entirely possible, and these actionable reframes are your best tools for that transformation. First, just try adding the word yet. Instead of saying I failed, shift it to I haven't mastered this yet. Boom, you instantly open up this huge gray area for future growth. Next, reframe your social anxiety. Instead of jumping to, oh my God, they hate me, consider the much more nuanced reality. They might just be having a terrible day that has absolutely nothing to do with you. And finally, you have to practice the most vital skill of all, just becoming comfortable existing in the space of uncertainty without needing an immediate answer.
Now, I won't lie to you, this is terrifying. It really is the scariest level of discipline because it requires giving up the false safety of those simple slogans we talked about earlier. It takes incredible mental fortitude to sit with a problem or a conflict and actively refuse to immediately categorize it. It feels super vulnerable. It feels like you're losing control. But allowing yourself to genuinely be okay with the gray area, that is the only real path to intellectual maturity.
Embracing complexity is never a sign of weakness or indecision. Actually, it's the exact opposite. It's a sign that you're operating on a level that is frankly too smart for most people to handle. When you shud the all-or-nothing mindset, you stop limiting your own potential. You stop forcing the world into dull black and white, and you unlock the ability to see the vibrant, full-color truth that most people completely miss.
So, as we wrap up this explainer, I want to leave you with one final thought to spark some self-reflection for your week ahead. Where in your life do you really need to start seeing the gray? Is there a relationship you've been a little too rigid about? Maybe a project you've labeled a failure way too quickly? Or an opinion you're holding on to with just a bit too much absolute certainty? Challenge yourself to find the nuance this week. Keep questioning those simple slogans, keep embracing the gray, and I'll catch you in the next one.